Alright, welcome to video 2 for Lab Monster Toolkit. We're going to cover the sequence recording and playback functionality for the toolkit. So we're already in our frame-based mode, we're connected to a game, everything is basically set up, we've got our controller set up properly, everything from video 1 has been done. So let's start binding some hotkeys for recording and playing back inputs. So I'm going to bind my left and right stick buttons to start, stop recording, and save recording. This will make it so that I can very easily not have to use the keyboard to start and stop recordings. You can if you want, it's very easy to do, but I just find this is a much better way of doing it. Okay, so we're going to record a simple Magic Series combo with Dante. You can see once I press the record button, this column turns red to let you know that you are recording. Alright, I go ahead and hit the stop recording button. If you press stop recording, the record is still in a buffer, and as long as you don't record something new, you can press save recording after. And we're just going to go ahead and record this as UMDC3 Dante. And now let's go ahead and load that sequence. Well, before we load that sequence, let's open the editor and let's edit the sequence to take out the big gap in the beginning where we weren't doing anything. So we're going to go ahead and pull this up. So we clicked on Open Editor right here, and this is the input editor for our sequence. So this shows you all of the inputs for the sequence. This is a pretty robust editor. So this second frame here, we're going to delete this first input because this was just pressing the record button, and we're going to make this second input go down to 3 frames instead of 177. So we're going to go ahead and save. Some important things to note about this editor: you can add comments to your inputs. So if you're getting lost in terms of just trying to see where you are in your combo, you can just say, hey, let's go ahead and say that, like, light is pressed here, and you can also change the border color on these inputs so that it's easier to follow along visually with what's going on. You can also select multiple inputs and drag them around. Let's do that with this, just so I'm not dragging anything that's important. So you can drag and drop inputs around. You can drag multiple inputs around. You can select multiple inputs and edit them. So you can edit multiple with this multi-edit feature here. And this will let you change values across the inputs. There's also search functionality so that you can search through comments to select a bunch of different inputs that all have the same text in comments. There's copy, there's paste, there's add input after selected, which is this. There's add input at the end of the sequence. There's a lot of functionality here. You can also flip the left and right of the joystick with this button. Now, there is not undo. Unfortunately, at this point, the editor does not have any undo functionality, so I strongly recommend saving backups of your inputs while you're editing them so that if you have something that's pretty good, when you go to edit it to make a new copy of it, save the old copy so that if you screw something up, it's very hard to get back what you had. Okay, with that all being said, let's go ahead and load the sequence into player 1 here. And then we're going to hit play sequence. And there we go. It played back. Everything happened as you would expect. So the other thing that we can do is go ahead and record a sequence for Wolverine. So I'm going to hold back and just record Wolverine holding back for 5-6 seconds, something like that. So we're going to go ahead and save that recording as UMDC3 Wolf back. And I'm going to open the editor and just double check that it's doing what I want. So you can see this just holds back for 401 frames and then lets go for 717 frames. I'm actually going to change that to down back because I want him to block this entire sequence. So what I'm going to do now is go to playback sequence here, changing the mode to playback sequence. If you click play sequence, it will immediately change the mode to playback sequence. If you want to control Dante again, you have to remember to change your player 1 input mode to mirror master input. So if you go back to the game and your controller suddenly stops working, make sure that your modes are set correctly for your input to be passed through. So let's load the sequence in for Wolverine. And then what I'm going to do, so if I just hit play sequence on these, it will play each sequence when I press play sequence, which is not exactly what we want. So we want to play both of these sequences simultaneously. There are situations where you could reasonably want to have be labbing out or testing different punishes or different situations where one controller is doing one thing and another controller is doing another thing, and you want frame perfect parity between those controllers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the hotkeys here. I'm going to unbind my start and stop recording because I'm done recording for now. And because I can have multiple things bound to the same input, it's important to unbind those inputs. And I'm going to just bind play sequence to that button and bind stop play sequence to that button. Now this also works if you use the keyboard hotkeys. It will play both, but I like using the controller hotkeys. So I'm just going to press the controller hotkey for play both, and I'm going to forget that I need to change the mode for player 1. So let's make sure we have player 1 in playback mode, playback sequence mode. I'm going to press it. And now you can see Dante is doing the same sequence, but Wolverine is blocking it. So that is basically everything that you need to know about the sequence playback and editing. One other feature to note is that if you have a sequence that's been recorded in what I call frame mode, where we've talked about this in the previous video, where you're in frame-based mode, you can check this button and it will change to timer mode in here. The save does vary depending on if you made a recording as a frame-based recording or a timer-based recording. And so if you have a game, for example, that doesn't work with frame-based playback and you want to use timer-based playback, you do have to be aware of which mode you're in and which mode you're using between these two things. I understand that can be a little confusing, but I wanted to make sure I that I supported both functionalities. By default, if you can, you should always favor being in frame-based mode, but you can move to timer-based. I understand it is sometimes faster, and if you're not doing something that's very, very frame-tight, timing mode is totally fine. All right, thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below or on the itch.io page.